So I was born and raised in Redmond. I work for Redmond Minerals. Redmond Minerals has two products. We have a natural clay and we have a product called real salt. And so we'll briefly talk about those. Real salt is our product. Redmond's real salt was deposited here in Utah, up at Redmond. We're 150 miles north of Cedar City. And the geologists say that when the earth was created, now they say it was 150 million years ago. I don't know if that's when it took place because I wasn't working for Redmond at the time. But at a time in Earth's history, before the acid rain, the toxic waste, the sewage, and the garbage that's so common today, there was an ancient sea that covered from Nevada all the way to Nebraska, according to the geologists. And this ancient sea, over eons of time, dried up, went out of solution, and left this layer of salt. And somehow the minerals that were in that sea were captured within the crystallization of the salt, which is totally unique because the Salt Lake, the Great Salt Lake, as it dries out, makes the salt flat. What color is the salt flat? It's white, yeah. The salt mines of Kansas are white. The salt mines of Texas are white. It's always white because normally when an ancient sea goes out of solution, the minerals will settle out separately and leave a white layer of salt, and then the minerals are below it. Well, something happened with Himalayan and with Redmond that the minerals were stirred up, were captured within the crystallization of the salt. Because of that, the Himalayan salt and the Redmond salt have these minerals. And back in the 1930s, there was a nutritionist who determined that the ratio of sodium chloride, my thumb, to minerals, my fingers, that ratio is the same in natural seawater as in the human blood. So he went on to theorize that if you got a sea salt with the sodium chloride and the minerals in that balance, the body could assimilate it easier. It wouldn't cause the high blood pressure and the water retention and all the problems that salt was blamed for causing. Well, his research is what gave rise to the demand for sea salt. But it didn't take industry long to realize that they could take seawater, they could leach off the minerals if they weren't already gone. They could leach those away from the seawater. And now with the sodium chloride there all by itself, no minerals, just straight sodium chloride, legally they could still sell it as sea salt. And that's how 90% of the sea salts were in the 1960s when the health food people came to us and said, we just realized that we're being ripped off. The sea salts in our stores has no minerals. They're white, refined, chemicalized salts. And yet legally, they were still being sold as sea salt. So the health food people came to us saying, we want to buy your salt as sea salt, as table salt. Well, up until that time, our salt was only sold for livestock. Because up until that time, these minerals were viewed as impurities. So it wasn't considered fit for human consumption. But when we learned that these were not impurities, these were minerals, this is what should have been in the sea salts that were being sold in the health food stores, then we began to sell our salt as table salt. We called it real salt because it really is what sea salt is supposed to be. And instantly, as we began to sell it, we began getting letters back from people saying that it was lowering blood pressure. We have a stack of letters I cannot even reach my hand over from people who say our salt lowers blood pressure, eliminates water retention. I've had women tell me it's the best diuretic they've ever found. Gets rid of restless leg syndrome in a heartbeat, literally. So it has just lots of health benefits. Now, we don't sell it with any medical claims. We sell it as the best tasting salt you'll ever eat and guarantee that it is. We guarantee that because I've had people look me right in the eye and say, Neil, how much sugar have you put in this? We haven't put any sugar in it. It's just the natural salt, but it has this natural sweet flavor. So we feel it's the very best salt in the world. It's number one because it's from an ancient, unpolluted ocean. It still has the minerals, and it tastes so great. If you couldn't get Redmond salt, if you couldn't get Redmond real salt, then we would recommend the Himalayan, because the Himalayan really would be the next best salt that you could get. One thing that's interesting to us now, and I haven't tasted the Himalayan and the Redmond side by side, but people who do say that they like the flavor of this better, that the Himalayan has some describe it as a sulfur taste more than the Redmond. What's most impressive to me, the Himalayan salt, they sell it for people, and they also sell it for livestock. for cows and horses. So do we. If you take a piece of the Himalayan salt and a chunk of the Redmond salt side by side and put them out in front of a horse or a cow, animals refuse to eat Himalayan if the Redmond is there. Now, if the Redmond's not there and they're choosing between Himalayan and Morton, they take Himalayan. There's another salt called Celtic salt. May have heard of that one. We feel that's the third best. The disadvantage there is that it's coming off from a modern ocean. So the acid rain, the toxic waste, the sewage, the garbage that's in our oceans and atmospheres today would be exposed to the Celtic salt.